Welcome to today's webinar on Making Sense of EVs, which is jointly hosted by the ACT Expo and our partner, the California Plug-in Electric Vehicle Collaborative. My name is Joanne Golden-Stewart, Senior Program Manager at Gladstein Neandros & Associates, and it is my pleasure to be moderating the Making Sense of EVs webinar today. GNA is a leading clean transportation and energy consulting firm that works with a multitude of leading fleet operators. For more than 20 years, we have worked extensively with vehicle and equipment providers, product and fuel suppliers, natural gas and electric utilities, clean energy advocates such as trade associations, environmental groups, non-governmental organizations, and government agencies, all to advance the use of alternative fuels and clean vehicle technologies. Along these lines, GNA has a full-scale events and marketing team that produces a series of clean transportation conferences, including the Advanced Clean Transportation Expo, or ACT Expo. We believe ACT Expo is the largest clean fleet conference and expo in the world, representing all alternative fuels and efficiency technologies for all weight classes. I'm excited to lead today's conversation on key incentives for electric vehicle deployment in fleets. Every fleet is well aware that the cost difference between purchasing a traditional gasoline or diesel vehicle versus the purchase price of an alternative fuel vehicle can be substantial. Regardless of weight class and alternative fuels used, differences in cost mostly still remain in the purchase price of these vehicles. With EVs now moving into the fleet market, fleets are examining this issue more than ever before and are trying to navigate how these costs can be reduced. Recognizing this upfront and initial cost difference, OEMs and governments at the federal, state, and local level have developed programs to reduce this cost difference, to level the playing field with traditional gas or diesel vehicles, and in many instances, provide really compelling cost propositions that, especially when considering the historical volatility in traditional gas prices, can really make alt-fuel vehicles not only the more sustainable choice, but also the more economical one. And for this reason, we have prepared a one-hour webinar to really discuss these incentive programs that are offered by key OEMs and governments throughout North America. Joining me today is Lisa Chilidakis from the California Plug-in Electric Vehicle Collaborative, who will be giving opening remarks on the webinar, followed by Mark Deutsch from Nissan, and Joe Anati from Gladstein Neandros & Associates. We will end with moderated questions and answers. Before we set sail, here are just a few things to keep in mind as we go through each presentation. I encourage you to submit any questions you have for our speakers by using the Q&A box located in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. We will be answering as many questions as possible during the question and answer session that will follow the presentations. You can submit questions at any time, and we'll add them to the queue as they come in. A full recording of today's webinar will be available for download on the ACT Expo website. Stay tuned for an email link to this recording within just a few days. At the end of the webinar, we kindly ask that you complete our quick 30-second survey. Your feedback is truly appreciated. Lastly, for any technical issues and assistance during the webinar, please contact Grace Jameson at grace.jameson@gladstein.org. Her information is also available on the screen. She can be reached at 310-573-8567. With that, let's get started. In addition to our ACT Expo EDTA partnership, we are partnering with the leading electric vehicle organization in California, the California Plug-in Electric Vehicle Collaborative, which has made tremendous strides in addressing some of the most pressing barriers to the adoption of electric vehicles. We have Lisa here with us today, and she's the manager of their technology and programs. Lisa, I'm going to turn it over to you to provide some opening remarks.
Thanks, Joanne, and thank you for the opportunity to partner with you and GNA on this webinar. The California Plug-in Electric Vehicle Collaborative was formed in 2010 and is a public-private organization focused on accelerating the adoption of PEVs to meet California's economic, energy, and environmental goals. Our members include automakers, utilities, state and local government, NGOs, research institutions, and EV charging station and network providers. California is a leader when it comes to plug-in electric vehicles. We are now approaching 200,000 plug-in electric vehicles on our roads, and over half of all PEVs sold nationally are sold here in California. But we still have a long way to go to meet the governor's goal of 1.5 million zero-emission vehicles on our roads by 2025. So we really need the help of fleets to get these cars on our roads, and I think that fleets can take get a lot of good advantage from zero-emission vehicles. We know fleets have many mandates and initiatives calling for more alternative fuel vehicles, in particular zero-emission vehicles, to be placed in their fleets. PEVs can be a great option given the variety of technologies as well as makes and models on the market now and coming soon. From plug-in hybrids that get up to 50 miles of all-electric range with a gasoline engine for longer trips, to a variety of battery electric vehicles with ranges of 70 miles or higher that can reliably do many of the shorter trips that fleets have. The variety of options and the range of these vehicles is growing each year. However, as Joanne mentioned, although PEVs have lower lifetime costs compared to traditional and other alternative fuel vehicles, we know that upfront costs are a big factor for fleets as they plan what types of alternative fuel vehicles or vehicles in general to purchase. That is why incentives for both the vehicles and charging infrastructure is key to help grow the market, and specifically incentives that fleets can take advantage of are very important. So it's great that we're here today to hear about these incentives and how fleets can use them to grow the number of PEVs in their fleets. I also want to mention quickly that if you, anyone on the line today want to learn more basics about plug-in electric vehicles and PEV charging stations and infrastructure, the Plug-in Electric Vehicle Collaborative will be hosting a webinar called PEVs 101 coming up later this month on Tuesday, February 23rd at 10 a.m. And we can send some information through Joanne out to you about that webinar. And then we also have a searchable database of PEV incentives available on what we call the PEV Resource Center. And that way you can put in your zip code or search different types of incentives to see what you may be eligible to apply for. And the URL for that incentives database is www.driveclean.ca.gov/PEV. And also we can send that information out to you following the webinar. So with that, I'd like to thank GNA again for partnering with us and turn it back over to Joanne.
All right, thank you, Lisa, and thank you to the California Plug-in Electric Vehicle Collaborative for everything you continue to do to advance the industry. Now I want to turn to Mark Deutsch from Nissan. Mark is the EV Business Development Manager for the Western region of the U.S. Mark's current role as EV Business Development Manager for the West and Northwest regions with Nissan allow him to focus on developing relationships with Fortune 500 companies, government, and universities on promoting the Nissan Leaf fleet applications as well as workplace charging. Mark has a BS in Aerospace Engineering and an MBA. And coming from someone who has worked with Mark for years now, he has been extraordinarily successful at the deployment of Nissan Leafs in California and has been instrumental in the development of programs to deploy these vehicles for fleets. So with that, Mark, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Joanne and GNA for setting up and hosting this webinar. And also I just want to say thank you to Lisa for the intro and all that the PEV Collaborative does. So with that, I just want to say good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. And thank you for the opportunity and the privilege to speak to you today. It is especially exciting to speak about the Leaf and how it fits in the fleet. First thing I want to do is mention to everybody this is going to be a high-level overview of Leafs and fleets today. And there's a lot of deep diving we can do, but I'm just going to go on the high level here. And I just wanted to give another update that some of this information is going to be U.S. specific. I know we might have some attendees that are outside the United States, and you have to check locally with some of the Nissan specific strategies and sales tactics that are out there. So the Nissan Leaf is proven reliability. With that, we say the Nissan Leaf was introduced in 2010 as the first mass market EV for everyday use. And what we mean by mass market is that we want it to be just like every other vehicle on the road. It's not supposed to be a compliance car or a test vehicle or anything like that. It's a real car. And it has already become the best-selling EV in automotive history. With that, we've sold 200,000 plus globally, of which 90,000 of those are on U.S. roads today. The Leaf has driven well over 2 billion zero-emission miles. Our lithium-ion battery packs are made in Smyrna, Tennessee, and that is also the location of the final assembly of the vehicle. We're also proud that the Nissan Leaf for the 6th model year introduced the first affordable EV to break the 100-mile range. According to EPA, that has a 107-mile rating. Now, just to meet the Leaf, one of the things that we're proud of with the Leaf is the greenhouse gas reduction. And as we know, the traditional means to reducing CO2 emissions show only incremental improvements. and we really don't get close to counteracting all the growth of vehicles on the road. Furthermore, we know that improvements to gasoline engines can only reduce emissions to about 35%. So it's an expensive venture for not a great return. Hybrids and even plug-ins do more, but only achieve about a 50% reduction. Again, it's a very solid transition step, but not enough for us to reach a goal of 90% reduction. That is where battery electric vehicles such as the Nissan Leaf come in. The Leaf has no tailpipe, so no tailpipe emissions. Of course, we don't ignore the fact that there are carbon emissions on the supply side when using coal or natural gas to generate electricity. However, when you consider well-to-wheel, pure electric still are considerably cleaner than internal combustion powered vehicles. After all, it's easier to control emissions at a handful of power plants than it is to control tens of millions of vehicles on the road. And power grids continue to get cleaner all the time through the use of renewable energy sources such as wind, solar, and hydro. When we can power the vehicles from one of those renewable energy sources, then it truly will be a zero-emissions vehicle from well to wheel, which you'll never get from gas, diesel, or hybrid. One of the other benefits for the Leaf is lower cost. We have that through fuel savings. There are many different calculations that people use, but it simply is 50% plus savings. It depends on where you're getting electricity from, what the fuel costs are, but the savings are there. The maintenance savings typically are 30% or better savings over ICE vehicles, internal combustion engine vehicles, and that is through no oil changes, smog checks, no tune-ups, there's no transmission, and overall, all that leads to lower total cost of ownership. The vehicle has also longer longevity, like less moving parts. Once again, there's no transmission to go bad, no service needed on that. There are no belts, so there's just a lot of less parts and less to go wrong. We also have higher driver satisfaction. The smoothness and quietness of driving a Nissan Leaf is often quieter and smoother than that of very expensive luxury vehicles. And the performance, since we have 0% or 100% torque at 0 RPMs, gives it a peppy takeoff off the line. With that, we also have range management features, which include a heat pump for more efficient heat climate control. We've done a lot of aerodynamic drag reduction. We have available D mode, which is for increased regen from the braking. We also have engineered low friction brake calipers. The Nissan is available in all 50 states. It has been from day one. And the Nissan Leaf has won the Loyalty Award 2 years in a row, which basically means that people love driving a Leaf and they stay in the vehicle. On the next slide, here we have an example of two pretty popular Leaf vehicles today, the Ford Focus and the Ford F-150. Just to give you a brief idea, so on the Ford Focus, approximate fuel savings over 5 years is approximately $4,700. We had the insurance savings, maintenance and repair savings, and we have an approximate estimate savings of $10,417, and I'll use that number again later on in the presentation. Now, why do entities buy Leaf? Why do people buy the Leaf for fleet? We talked about greenhouse gas reduction. That is something on most states, governments, and everybody's mind, and we have continually growing goals to reduce those greenhouse gases. We have initiatives. So the main reason that people are buying a Leaf for their fleet is that they want to have better greenhouse gas reduction. They also want to meet their sustainability needs and goals. And often the entities want to be a role model for the communities. So if they show that they're driving electric vehicles, it shows that they're doing the right movements, right steps to lower emissions, and it also has a lot of buy-in from the public. And also today, a lot of people like to take advantage of the incentive and grants that are a vehicle. There are incentive and grants available for vehicles and for infrastructure. And one of the things that many entities also want to do is save money, but save money isn't always one of the top items that people use when choosing a Leaf for a fleet. And how is the Leaf used in fleet? A variety of different ways. They're mostly used in motor pools, often used in parking enforcement. They're used in shuttles, used for security vehicles. They're often used in car sharing or ride sharing programs. Some people use them for delivery services, and they're also popping up more and more as taxis. Let me give an example of the Leaf fleet in Seattle, and I want to thank the City of Seattle for providing the information. So the City of Seattle has 79 Leafs in their fleet, and they're used for motor pool and parking enforcement. Actually, currently, 7 of the Leafs are actually not been activated yet, but they're going to be shortly, and I believe they're going to be in parking enforcement. To date, the Nissan Leaf has racked up close to a little bit over 3/4 of a billion miles in their fleet, and they've got cumulative fuel savings versus gas vehicles in the fleet of $133,000, approximately 17 cents a mile, and they have a savings over the hybrid vehicles in their fleet as well of over $47,000 or 6 cents a mile. And did a quick calculation of CO2 reduction, just using the base numbers of approximately 20 pounds per gallon of gas, equates to about 620,000 pound reduction of CO2s from the City of Seattle. So that's a great job. And how can Nissan assist you if you want to get into having Leafs in your fleet? One of the things that we do is we help integrate the car into your fleet. We do this with a few different things. We do ride and drives with your employees, which often we sit in there and drive with them so we give them a comfort level and feeling. You can walk through and show them how to charge the vehicles that go through, the differences of charging and some of the concerns that come up. We show some driving techniques. And on some of the vehicles, we have telematics. We have the Nissan Connect EV. Some of you may know the Nissan Leaf from the early days when it was called CarWing. Nissan Connect EV has replaced CarWing. But that is only available on the SD and the SL trims. And the Nissan Connect EV does allow one to check the state of charge on the battery, which is an important thing when the vehicle is in your fleet. It also allows remote starting a charging session. It also lets you be notified when the battery is fully charged. And when we have extreme climates, whether it be heat and cold, we know that has an effect on the range of the vehicle. So it also allows you to charge, it allows you to, the cars, when the vehicle is plugged in, allows you to preheat or pre-cool the vehicle. That does a few things. It makes the environment for the driver when he gets in the car more comfortable. But it also has a benefit on the range. If the vehicle is already at temperature and we get the electricity from the wall versus the battery, it allows you to keep it longer range. Another thing that we do assist is we do have some infrastructure assistance that we provide, and that is based on a number of vehicles, budget available, and so forth. So it's something that you should discuss with your local electric vehicle business development manager if they're looking at getting a Nissan Leafs to your fleet, what is available for infrastructure. The other thing on the next slide you'll see is the support that we have from inquiry to purchase. So one of the things is, you can contact your Nissan electric vehicle business development manager for support, and they'll help you develop an EV strategy. We will help you assessing the available Nissan financial products. Some people want to purchase the vehicles outright, and some are looking at leasing. So we do have different tools available for both. The other thing is we facilitate purchasing through an accredited Nissan Leaf dealer, so you have the support in terms of service and, excuse me, and have people there to help when needed. And the other thing that we help is just planning for charging. And that we do that not just sit there and say you need a charger. We kind of help develop an infrastructure strategy, which can be level 2s and our DC fast charging. Excuse me for my voice. And 2016 Leaf pricing. This is something that everybody's always interested in. So the S trim starts at $29,010. And currently, one of the things that we just announced recently is a fleet incentive of $8,000, which takes the effective starting price down to $21,010. And this is prior to any federal tax credits, state rebates, or any other local incentives. Those are all in addition to, if you can take advantage of them. Once again, the Nissan Leaf, the S-Trim is 100% electric, no gas, has an EPA estimated range of 84 miles. And with that, the base Model S also comes with remote keyless entry and charge port release, has a backup camera, has heated seats, Bluetooth, satellite radio. It is a 5-passenger vehicle with over 23 cubic feet of rear cargo space. And as we move to the SV trim, It goes up in price a little bit. It goes up to $34,200. It still has the available $8,000 fleet tax credit. And then this comes to a starting price of $26,200. Once again, this is also before any federal tax credits, state rebates, or local incentives. In addition to the items available on the S term, the SV comes with the Chatham fast charging port included. It is also 100% electric. It has the larger battery, so it has 107 miles of EPA rated range. And with the larger battery, it also comes with a faster onboard charging system and also comes with navigation. And here's a brief map to show you where and who the BDM managers or the electric vehicle business development managers are. If you'd like to get in contact with any of them, feel free to contact me and I can get you in contact with them. Or if you already work with a Nissan fleet manager, you can ask them for assistance to get in contact with the electric vehicle business development manager. We're out there. We help both public and private. We also know about all the incentives that are available in each local region. So we are there to help you not just take delivery of the vehicle, but we're there to assist with all the details from infrastructure to incentives all the way to the purchase of the vehicle. And at this time, I want to say thank you to Joanne and to GNA for hosting this webinar.
Thank you, Mark. And Nissan is clearly a leader in electric vehicles, so it's exciting to hear about everything you're working on to really deploy these vehicles into the fleet market. One slight housekeeping item that I do want to touch base on, for whatever reason, some people are having technical difficulties on the Q&A portion of this in terms of actually being able to enter and send their questions. While it is working for some people, if you are having that challenge, you can go ahead and just send a chat message directly to me, and we can answer those questions that way as well. So now I want to turn to Joe Anati from GNA. Joe is responsible for managing GNA's Funding 360 program. In addition to providing project management, data analysis, and strategy development expertise for GNA's broad client base, Joe has several years of experience with heavy-duty projects in Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi, and most recently held a leadership position with the U.S. EPA's Diesel Emissions Reduction Act grants program. Joe, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Joanne. I appreciate the introduction, and thank you also to Mark and Lisa for their comments and presentations. As Joanne mentioned, I'm the leader of the Funding 360 program, and it's just a part of a whole of what GNA offers in terms of our services. We provide a suite, a comprehensive suite of offerings, and our 20 years of clean transportation experience has brought us in front of a wide array of clients and fleets and fuel suppliers, off-road equipment manufacturers, government agencies. And we provide a broad array of services in fleet planning and procurement, our regulatory affairs department, and as well as Joanne mentioned earlier, our event and marketing team. One of the components of that is our experience with grant writing and incentives programs, and we call this the Funding 360 program. And what it does is it allows our clients to stay as up-to-date as possible on incentive programs that go towards funding a wide range of activities. So you can use it for vehicle deployments, you can use it to support infrastructure development, or you can use it for research and development or the demonstration of a pre-commercial technology. And it's not necessarily dedicated to any type of fuel type. We look at all alternative fuels, cleaner diesel technologies as well. So it's really a broad range of incentive programs that we monitor. GNA's industry-leading grants team has helped secure over $255 million in funding to support a number of different project development goals. Our grants writing team has a success rate of over 90%, and we've applied for more than 300 different, or rather we've submitted over 300 different applications. Now you may sort of question that number, and that 300 number may sort of resonate as a little bit low, and it is, but there's a reason for that. In all of our years, our key goal with this is we only go after funds that we know we can win on behalf of our clients. We are not a application factory. It is not our intention to merely just write applications and throw spaghetti at the wall, if you were. But our goal is to go after funding that we know we can win, and that allows us to not only bring funding to the best fleets, but it also supports the funding authorities by bringing them the best projects. So we're helping both sides of the coin in that regard. And when we've led to over the deployment of over 2,700 vehicles, alternative fuel vehicles, and also took part in the construction of 78 alternative fuel stations. So what Funding 360 is this comprehensive view of grants management. It's a soup-to-nuts strategy. And we start with establishing goals. We provide this tracking effort, which I'll get to in just a second. We support the application and submission of funding incentive applications, as I just mentioned. And what this all does is it allows you to take early notice of funding opportunities. It positions you well, and it gives you that distinct competitive advantage that really helps you compete in the marketplace. And the last thing, just is for anybody who's ever tried to dig into one of these things, to look at an RFP or look at a funding opportunity announcement, you've no doubt seen how detailed and overwhelming these things can be. These RFPs typically are 50 to 100 pages, and then there's appendices on appendices. There's a ton of spreadsheets you have to fill out. Well, Funding 360 allows you to not have to dive so deep, to not really dive at all. We deliver it to you. We take all that information and aggregate it and deliver it to you in a very easily digestible program. So to better understand what types of incentives are out there, I wanted to first take a look at the funding trends that we're seeing. There's several different priorities that have come about in the past few years that have focused the funding in very specific geographies or fuel types. So first, with geographies, the first priority we're seeing is what are known as criteria pollutants. The Environmental Protection Agency regulates 6 different pollutants, which they term as criteria pollutants. It's particulate matter, lead, carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, and most recently, they just lowered in October 2015 the ozone, the ground level ozone standard, from 0.75 ppm down to 0.70 ppm. Now, what this does, and just as a reference, ozone isn't emitted by anything. It's not emitted from a tailpipe or anything like that. But it forms when NOx, or nitrogen oxides, and volatile organic compounds form in the air in the presence of sunlight. So in order to combat ground level ozone, you have to go to the pollutants that create it, which are NOx and volatile organic compounds. Now in the United States, 60% of all NOx emissions come from mobile sources, anything with a wheel. So with this new regulatory standard, what this is going to do is it's going to require that funding has to go towards counties, which you can see in the maps, substantially more on the right now that the standard is lower. Funding is going to flow from federal agencies down to these counties and to combat NOx. And the counties know that mobile sources are their leading pollutant, which means they're going to target incentive programs that go after mobile sources. The next priority is greenhouse gases. There's been a lot of publicity about this. For those on the East Coast, the recently announced Plan NYC made the goal of 80% GHG reductions by 2050 as compared to 2005 levels. On the West Coast, the California Climate Investments developed under AB 32, and then the recent announcement in 2015 from the governor with their own 2050 goal. The Paris, the COP21 conference, a huge commitment by hundreds of nations to their own GHG goals. And then it worked out well, as Mark mentioned earlier, actually, the reference to the Department of Energy's well-to-wheel study. EVs typically have a well-to-wheel emissions advantage over conventional vehicles. And that's, when you look at how the energy is produced, if you look at the right, nationwide, almost 45% of our electricity is sourced from coal power. So when you look at how that power is produced, how it trickles down into the vehicles, and you look at the graph on the bottom right of annual emissions per vehicle in pounds of CO2 equivalents, you can see how much better performing electric vehicles, plug-in hybrids, and hybrid vehicles perform as compared to a conventional gasoline vehicle. And the last priority I want to focus on is spurring innovation. There's 2 particular programs, and these are by no means the only 2. That have really driven innovation in the market. The first is California's ZEV, or Zero Emission Vehicle Action Plan. It grew out of a 2012 executive order in the state, and essentially the main goals of the program are 1 million electric vehicles and fuel cell electric vehicles by 2020, and then $1.5 million by 2025. And those goals lay the groundwork for the development of incentive programs needed to spur that development. The other program is DOE's EV Everywhere Grand Challenge. This has been in play also since 2012, and the technical goal here is that they want to position the U.S. as the first nation in the world to produce electric vehicles that are as affordable as the average American family car by 2022. So their three goals rely on vehicle weight reduction, electric drive cost system reduction, and battery cost reduction. And in order to meet those goals, they've actually developed hundreds of millions of grant funding programs and one of them I'll show you today, that help automakers and technology developers and eventually enable those goals. So I want to highlight a couple of incentive programs, and as I mentioned before, Funding 360, GNA's program Funding 360 tracks all of these programs on a regular basis, and we keep in touch, and it enables us to get a little bit of a lead on when they're going to open and help our clients identify their priorities in terms of both geographic funding as well as the types of technology that they can use. Before I get into the exact sources, I want to highlight that these funding programs come from an array of different organizations. They can be from the federal and state level. California Energy Commission is regarded as one of the most proficient funding agencies in terms of advancing funding for both the vehicle deployments as well as research and development programs. There are regional organizations. Clean Cities is a huge player, obviously, in this market. District and county governments often have their own funding. This is typically seen more in California with their air districts. And also utilities. Those are a great place to start because they can work with you to develop the integration with the grid if you're installing infrastructure and things of that nature. The first program I want to highlight is actually a suite of programs in Massachusetts, and as I mentioned, the policy is really a driver of the incentive. So the policy comes first, and what happened in Massachusetts is they set their policy to set a 35% reduction goal by 2030 and a 55% goal by 2040. So the two incentive programs here are what's called the More EV program. It's short for the Massachusetts Offers Rebates for Electric Vehicles. It offers a $2,500 rebate for a new vehicle, and there's also Mass EVIP, which is the Massachusetts Electric Vehicle Incentive Program. So for public agencies, they can receive $7,500 per vehicle, and you can also receive up to $13,500 per charging unit. I want to go back to the Department of Energy's program. As I mentioned, this is part of the EV Everywhere Grand Challenge, and the Grand Challenge is sort of this umbrella program. And what it does is that it spurs off these individual grant programs. This happens to be the fiscal year 2016 Vehicle Technologies Program-wide funding opportunity announcement. We just call it the Vehicle Tech Program for short. It's eligible for anybody under the sun, and it's focused on a number of different focused areas, so what they call areas of interest. And it's things like grid modernization or corrosion protection for batteries, advanced development, high voltage electrolytes. And it has, this particular program has $55.5 million available. The key here is that concept papers are due next week. So what happens is you draft a 2- or 3-page concept paper, submit it to the agency, and then you go from there. The next one I want to highlight is New York's Electric Vehicle Truck Incentives Program. This is actually housed under a broader program called the New York Truck Voucher Incentive Program. This particular one happens to be focused on all electric vehicle trucks. So there's $7.8 million here for Class 3 through 8 trucks and buses, and it's operating statewide. And the funding is not based on the new vehicle. It's not just a rebate or things like that. It's focused on the incremental cost. And what it does, it covers 80% of the incremental cost, and the particular incentives range from $45,000 to $60,000 per truck. Very substantial incentives here. And just a kind of word to the wise on some of these programs, you're going to see this a lot more with the focused targeting of funding to specific geographies. The trucks for this program must be registered and garaged, and then run 75% of their mileage within one of 30 non-attainment counties. So it's very key that you can check from, and the program makes a number of available trucks from Motive and Smith, New Flyer. All these trucks are available, and I highly encourage you to seek out some more information from us if you'd like some detailed data. The last one I want to highlight is an infrastructure program called the DC Fast Chargers for California Corridors. This just opened up within the past few weeks, and it offers almost $10 million for DC fast charger equipment. There's some specific power requirements and technology requirements that we can get into more if you're interested, but what it is, it's called a fill-in-the-gap program. And essentially, the state has identified a number of different, actually 10 different corridors that are lacking DC fast charging. So what this does, it helps you fill in the gaps, it helps reduce the range anxiety for some of these equipment. And just a little bit of a tip, you must commit, if you want to install this equipment, you must commit to it being operational at least 95% of the time. So it's got to be open. And applications for this program are going to be open in June. So that's it for the incentives. As I mentioned, we're currently tracking over 500 different programs throughout the U.S. These are EV programs, these are natural gas. So I encourage you to reach out to us if you'd like to find out some more information.
All right, thank you, Joe. It is certainly exciting to hear about all of the significant strides that have been made to develop incentive programs throughout North America to advance electric vehicle adoption in all weight classes. And the work GNA is providing in this space is absolutely critical to enabling fleets, public and private alike, to find, apply, and comply with these different types of funding programs. So I want to say thank you to all of our speakers today. So at this time, we're actually going to transition to the moderated question and answer portion of the webinar. Thank you again to all of our attendees for submitting some great questions along the way, and there still is time, so if you do have any questions, feel free to go ahead and put them into the question and answer box. Or if for whatever reason that is still not working for you, you can go ahead and send a chat message as well. So, Mark, I'm going to go ahead and turn a couple of these items over to you because there were a few clarifying ones, and then I want to get to some questions for Joe as well. So several states have actually offered some pretty innovative programs to reduce the cost of the Nissan lease. Can you touch upon some of the ones that you've really found to be some of the most successful? Either they're currently available or maybe they were past programs, and they've really helped kind of move the market, and especially for fleets.
Well, I know that the Center for Sustainable Energy in California has a public fleet pilot project out there that helps entities that can't take advantage of the $7,500 federal tax credit. So they've come up with a $10,000 incentive, and there are specific zip codes qualified as disadvantaged communities, and entities that are located within those zip codes are able to take advantage of the $10,000 on a light-duty electric, 100% electric vehicle. And couple that with our incentive of $8,000, it's $18,000 off the vehicle, and that's a pretty aggressive stance. And I know that some other states have different discounts available, but that seems to be the most aggressive one out there.
Wonderful. And I know we kind of said different types of federal tax credits and other state and local tax credits that are available. Just so everyone has the information on hand, can you actually go over what that federal tax credit is?
Yeah, well, the federal government allows an OEM or anybody who builds an electric vehicle for the first 200,000 vehicles that are sold in the United States, that the purchaser of that vehicle can take a tax credit. Now, you have to have tax liabilities to take advantage of the tax credit. And typically it is for an individual up to $7,500 depending on your tax liabilities. And the dollar amount for plug-in hybrids and so forth is less. And I do know what it is for 100% electric, which is what I focus on.
All right, thank you. And so, Joe, I want to turn a few questions over to you before I go back to Mark on some of the different types of incentive programs. But we had a number of questions that actually came in regarding different types of incentive programs that are available for medium and heavy duty. applications. Can you touch upon some of the different types of incentives that you might be seeing in that side that could apply to electric applications for medium and heavy duty?
Sure. So it's sort of a tricky market because there's not a wide array of vehicles right now that are available. So some of the programs, just off the top of my head, that are going to fund medium and heavy-duty electric vehicles, there's a couple in California, specifically in the South Coast and San Joaquin. Chicago's Drive Clean Truck program is a great opportunity for electrics and hybrids. The New York program, as I mentioned, trying to think of a couple others. But yeah, I mean, it's really something that I would have to dig into further. So if whoever asked, I'd encourage, if you want to pass on the name, I'm happy to discuss further.
Wonderful. And if there's anyone else who is interested in that specific element of today's webinar and would like to kind of be on that chain to get some responses for it, please make sure to submit your questions into us so that way we have record that you asked those questions. So going into some additional pieces that have come up, Mark, you mentioned the $8,000 fleet incentive, and a lot of people had some questions on there, so I think there's a lot of interest on the webinar. So a couple of the ones that have come in is, how many vehicles do you consider to be a fleet that could actually qualify for this? Are there any specifications that you need to order, a specific number if you are a fleet?
Yes, first of all, that's a very good question. And yes, there is a specific number, and that number is the big number of 2. So specifically, it is 2 Leafs in one model year. So for example, if you were to purchase one 2015 and one 2016, that would not qualify. But if you purchase 2 2015s or 2 2016s, that would qualify you for the fleet discount per vehicle, or $8,000 per vehicle.
Wonderful. And then another question that some people had, so you just answered the prior model year question, but there were a few other ones that came in, and one had to do with, is this offered for all of the model types, so the S, the SV, and the SL, or is it only the higher end versions of the SV or SL that actually qualify?
No, it is available on all trim levels, on the S, the SV, and SL. We really do not have any restrictions on that, other than that you purchase 2 in one model year. And I'm not sure if you're going to ask this question, but I did see one come up on my computer regarding if Nissan has put the government discount on the state contract. So the fleet discount obviously is handled by Nissan North America. The state contracts are handled by the dealerships, and I know that some of those contracts have been out there for a while. But I do know in California, in Washington, there's new state contracts coming out shortly, and they will be incorporating the $8,000 discount.
Hold on, just one second. I think we have a little bit of music on our end. Yep, thank you.
So I'm not sure if you got the last part, but the last part is that for the fleet discount, it should be popping up on the government contract soon. If you don't see it on there, I would advise you contacting the dealer that has been awarded the contract and ask them to incorporate that into the purchase price.
All right. So another one of the questions that has actually come in is whether Nissan has any programs that you're currently offering to assist utilities in expanding their electric vehicle fleets within their service territory.
That's a good question. We do not have a program that's specific for utilities. However, if a utility wants to take advantage of the $8,000 fleet incentive, and if they buy a certain quantity, as I mentioned earlier, we will work with them in doing some infrastructure donations to help assist with the infrastructure.
All right. And then, Joe, we're going to go ahead and unmute your line really fast. But I did want to ask you if so based upon some of the information that you're tracking, do you see that there is any increased interest from other states that might be interested in doing some electric vehicle light-duty incentives aside from the ones that have already been mentioned. And I know we've heavily focused on New York and Massachusetts, but are there any others that really kind of stand out to you that you think are starting to offer these types of incentives that we should watch out for?
Yeah, so before I answer the question, I want to first apologize for my rendition of a dentist's chair with all the drilling in the background. I have no control over the construction in New York City, and unfortunately they scheduled it for right in the middle of this webinar, so my apologies for not coming in as clear as possible. So for the states that are kind of aside from the ones we've targeted, Texas, Colorado, Illinois is another good one. Massachusetts has shown a really big interest, as I mentioned earlier, in funding more programs. The key driver for these guys is looking at their needs and then approaching them with the ability to satisfy those needs. So what I mean by that is an EV fleet deployment can help meet their non-attainment goals if they have counties in non-attainment. If they have concerns or if they've shown a propensity for demonstration projects, if you have a county that likes R&D programs, that's a great opportunity to go with them and ask for some funding about EV deployments. You don't necessarily need to wait on a funding opportunity for it to go after and apply. A lot of times you can go to the funding agency themselves and start working with them and looking at what they want, what they want to do, and start working up opportunities that can ultimately satisfy your goals.
Wonderful. And this question actually, Joe or Mark might be able to address this and from different perspectives. And so, Mark, I'll turn to you first. Are there any particular sites or resources that you see out there, and Lisa, feel free to chime in on this as well, that you think are really good to track penetration throughout the U.S. rather than just one state in specific?
Well, one thing is I would always suggest that someone take a look at our website, nissanusa.com, and under the leaf we do have most of the programs that are available to the general public, whether it be a state rebate, HOV lane access, special rates, time of use rates from utilities, free parking. We have pretty much all of that, and it's updated on a monthly basis. Aside from that, I would point to the website that Lisa mentioned early on. They're a great resource. In California, there's the Center for Sustainable Energy, which does cover multiple states. And then there's a few other good ones that are out there.
Yeah,
so,
thanks.
I was going to turn to you, Lisa.
Oh, okay. I just was like charging in here. The one that I know off the top of my head that has more of a national information is the goelectricdrive.com. So I know that is focused on electric drive, but they would provide more of a national look at incentives, and that's the Electric Drive Transportation Association's website.
Wonderful. And Joe, I don't know if you have any piece that you want to add on that.
No, those were great. Those are great insights by Mark and Lisa. And if there's any interest from today's participants, please check out our website, gladstein.org, and there's a Funding 360 page if you'd like to find my contact information and any other further information.
Wonderful. And Lisa, I'm actually going to be pinging you again shortly because I think you can answer on some of the other types of vehicles as well. So we do have a question that came in, and because I think the way that it was phrased was so good that I actually want to ask it verbatim. So the question that came in said, our department's programs have over 150-plus employees who drive light-duty vehicles, 200-plus miles each workday. The problem is not city traveling. Our issue is range. What's in store for us in the next 2 years?
Well, from what Mark can talk to this too, but if you're talking, if they're really driving 200-plus miles, there are, we hear about the Model 3 from Tesla, but, that might be, in the next few years. I think definitely the Bolt, the General GM Bolt with a B is another car that's coming out in a reasonable price range with a 200+ mile range. And, you know, I think a lot of the manufacturers, Ford and Nissan, I mean, they don't have specific announcements, but I think the trend will be these longer range cars, you know, in the 200-mile plus battery size, and are going to be in a reasonable price range. I mean, they're all going to want to get a piece of this market, and we see them coming. And then plug-in hybrids, I think, too, are going to have longer battery ranges and be a good option as well. So I think the variety and the ranges are just going to be growing and increasing as the next few years. We're going to see some great new options.
Wonderful. And Mark, do you have anything?
I have a few things to say, not too much, but one thing is, there's always the, you know, presently today with the 107-mile Leaf, you know, if you're driving 200+ miles, if you're driving it all in one stretch, you know, obviously the car is not going to be able to make that range. But with that vehicle, with that battery, we also have the DC fast charger port on there. And for those of you that don't know or may not know, but the DC fast charging gives you an 80% charge in 30 minutes. And we do have numerous people in fleets and drivers that do drive 200+ miles a day. As long as they're able to break it up and do some fast charging, they're able to accommodate that range. I know it's not ideal. And with the introduction of, you know, Chevy Bolt and the mention of Tesla Model 3, you know, I can't really talk about future products, but I can say that during the Detroit Auto Show, our director of product planning did note, and it's out there, that we will have something that will meet or beat that in a similar time frame. We may not be the market first, but we will have something to combat the longer range. Now, it's one thing that we're working on constantly, is figuring out how to get longer range vehicles.
Wonderful. And we actually had a few questions that came in regarding electric buses. And because there's been such an increased interest, especially from the public side of things for electric buses, we have actually decided we're going to hold a whole webinar related to electric buses. And so definitely be on the lookout for that. We'll make sure that everyone who's on this list gets notified, so that way you can be a part of those conversations as well, and hear from some of the top OEMs who are developing these types of products, as well as key people who have quite a lot to say about the different types of technologies and incentives and different types of fleet tracking opportunities that are available for electric buses. So with that, I know that we are just about at that point, so I want to encourage anyone, if there's any additional questions that you would like to have answered. I know we're running out of time to be able to address all of them, so feel free to submit them, and if there are any remaining, we will definitely try and get you answers at the end. And so we have one more that I want to be able to provide information for. So there was a question that came in regarding running a comparison of the different types of costs for electric vehicles. And Mark, I know that you mentioned some of the different types of fleet activities that you provide. So does Nissan offer any sort of a comparison shopping, sort of a tool where fleets can look at it and go, okay, this is the price of the Nissan Leaf, this is the price of the Chevy Bolt, you know, these are the price of other types of programs that they could, you know, easily find that type of information through you or through some sort of a website?
I don't think it's available on our website, but if you contact myself, or if you're in a different part of the country, your local electric vehicle business development manager, we can definitely provide that information for you.
And then, Lisa, what about on your side? Do you know of any good tool that might be out there that is more publicly available?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Can you repeat the entire question?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So it's really about comparison cost shopping, and so looking at, you know, coupling all these different types of incentive options, and really saying, okay, this is that price of that Nissan Leaf, this is the price of the Chevy Bolt, and allowing something kind of easy to compare and contrast between the different types of options.
Well, I not exactly one tool comes to mind, but I that does that, and I know we're working on revamping some of our tools on the Drive Clean website. But if you do go to the Drive Clean website or the PEV Resource Center, we have a list of different cost calculator tools. They all offer different types of comparisons. So that is, and we do offer some information that does try to look at the MSRP, the incentives available, and break down how much the cost would be. So again, that PEV Resource Center has some of those tools and links available.
All right, thank you. So with that, I want to go ahead and start wrapping up the webinar. I apologize if you did end up submitting a question that we were unable to get to. We will do our best to try and make sure that we get answers to those questions. And as mentioned earlier, if you have specific interest in some of these electric truck incentives and you have not already sent me over a note saying you're interested in kind of being on that communication, please do so we have your contact information tied to that interest. So with that, I would like to extend a sincere thanks to our presenters for devoting time to the ACT Expo webinar series today. Feel free to contact either of them directly or me directly if you have any follow-up questions. I also want to thank each of our speakers and each of you for your willingness to participate in the second of an ongoing series of ACT Expo webinars. Today's webcast is really designed as a small preview of the program that is being offered during the 4-day Expo, which will be taking place May 2nd through the 5th in Long Beach. We had more than 200 individuals register to participate today, drawing attention to the incredible interest in electric technology as a solution to deliver both economic and environmental benefits to the transportation industry. The ACT Expo is being done in partnership with the Electric Drive Transportation Association and the California Plug-in Electric Vehicle Collaborative, and will feature a number of EVSE companies, electric vehicle OEMs, and other suppliers on the show floor and during the agenda. If you are interested in sponsoring ACT Expo or in attending, please do not hesitate to contact us directly. We encourage you to continue your education by joining us at ACT Expo this May 2nd through the 5th, 2016 in Long Beach. The agenda for the 2016 event was recently posted online at www.actexpo.com. As you can see on the screen, today's ACT Expo webinar participants are entitled to a $50 registration discount code with the code WEBINAR50. As a reminder, the recorded webinar will be available for replay via an email link within the next few days. Also, please remember to complete the brief survey that pops up once you exit the webinar window. We greatly appreciate your feedback in order to continue improving the ACT Expo webinar series. Thank you again for joining us today, and we'll see you in Long Beach.